Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to these interviews. Today, I am welcoming Elizabeth Long to spend a moment with us. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hi there, Francine.
How are you?
I'm really well. I'm finally down in the country out of the city. I couldn't be better right now.
So, thank you for accepting this invitation to spend a moment with us. My first question would be, what exactly is your role in the MA team?
Well, it's a team. I think just about everything we do is a team. And that's one thing I really like about it, just working together. But I do a lot of the writing, whether it's for content or the starting point of social media. Social media is a step-by-step, process. And to get to the final post, it goes through a lot of iterations and, teamwork with others. But I basically am a writer. I'm an artist and a writer. And so that's what I do.
Okay. And what called you to Mastering Alchemy first? I believe you were a student.
Yes. Back in
Mm-hmm.
2018, I started with Mastering Alchemy.
Oh,
And I'll tell you what called me. I was
yes.
watching an interview with Steve Rother from Lightworker,
Mhm.
Global Light Broadcast, Jim, and I think it was Jeffrey, maybe,
Yes.
I'm not sure the
Yes.
other one.
When they did
And
that threesome a
yeah, they did
few
a
years
couple of
back.
those.
Yeah.
And I had known of Steve's work, but I didn't know the other two. And Steve and Jeffrey were talking a lot, and Jim wasn't talking very much. And at one point he goes, "If you could just like yourself really quietly," and I was like, "Oh my God, that's brilliant!" Like I've never heard anybody give us a little step in between step, between where you are and really experiencing the love that you have for yourself. And it was just like one of those things. I'm like, okay, so who's this guy? What else does he have to say?
Mm.
So I just dove in because I've done like 40 some years of metaphysical and spiritual study. I've done a lot of different courses, workshops, channelings, reading. It's been my life, even though it's outwardly I've expressed it in many different ways. So I had a lot of experience, and it was something entirely new. Although it builds on a lot of principles I've already studied. So that was fantastic for me. And I dove in, and here I am.
Mm. So, how is it different now that you're taking part in it as a team member?
Well, there's a few ways it's different. One is that I don't have as much time to actually do mastering alchemy, which is I realize is a real out of balance thing. Now over the holidays, I was able to work it in a little bit more, but it's Vita says this, and Vita is who called me or got me into mastering alchemy on the team. We were working on another project together. She was in my MA 42, was that 43 eighth grade group. That's how we met.
Mhm.
And so she was sort of the key thing that got me in. And one thing I've talked to her about is like, we listen to the webinars, the classes, and it's like we're already doing them.
Mhm.
And for me, it's like there's this body of mastering alchemy work that's this sort of feed from the teachers of light and the archangels that comes into this, and it comes from the inside out. So it's really interesting to sort of have that, I'll call it a preset, a pre-staging sort of energy, and then to experience it, as a student, as a member of the audience, etc. Um, so it's sort of a doubling. Um, I better not try to say more about that, or I'll just talk.
but but I think to me it makes sense what you're saying, because also anyways I find that what differentiates Mastering Alchemy from many other school of thoughts or paths is the fact that if you want to master something, you have to practice it.
Yes,
You cannot
absolutely,
master anything without practicing
absolutely.
it and including it as a way of life.
That's right.
So then when we start working as a member of the team, it's already part of the fabric of your life.
Yes. Yes. And it becomes more so, you know,
Yes.
like I'm thinking about it all the time. I mean, I already was thinking about it all the time. Now I actually am living it all the time.
Yes.
It's, you know, there's
Yeah.
one little story. If you want, there's a story.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
I love this story. So, you know, part of my job in my role, I, you know, listen very intensely to recordings of the webinar along with looking at a transcript, pulling out little nuggets that we can use for social media posts, right? So I live in New York City most of the time, and there's a game there that we all play called alternate side street sweeping, where we all, you know, at certain hours together, when the street sweeper comes by, sit in our cars, and then we move it all to one side.
Yes. Yes.
I don't know, you probably know, and then we all move back. It's kind of crazy. You have to get into, like, you know, bird flock mind in order to do it. There's a lot of honking and etc. So in the time that you're sitting in the car, you can do things. And you know, I'm working. I'm nearly always working in there. So I was listening to Law of Attraction, and I was really into it. And just, you know, it was kind of getting bigger and bigger in my mind. And suddenly the street sweeper's coming by, and I wasn't ready. And I got pushed off the block. You know, I had to just go straight. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to lose my space. You know, my parking space, they're so valuable. So, you know, I went into it at like anxiety, and I've got to go a couple other blocks because the street's blocked off. And I'm like, wait, what was I just listening to? I was listening to how sometimes the frequency of something like anxiety is really close to excitement. And, you know, the universe hears your frequency, and that's what they give you. And I'm like, I got to get out of this anxiety or I'm never going to get parked. So I was actually able to switch into excitement, like, oh boy, I can't wait to see what park I get, you know?
Yes.
So I pull around the block, and I look down the street, and I could see that there were no parks except the one that I left. But there was a guy standing there in the park. And people do that in New York. They save a spot for their friend. You can get into a real altercation if you park there. So I'm like, I didn't drop it. I didn't drop my expectation. So this was key. And I was just like, I wonder how this is going to work out. I went into curiosity. So I'm driving down the block, and I'm just like, I wonder what's going to happen. And I held my expectation. I didn't drop the idea that I was going to get a park. And I pulled up beside the guy, and I thought, let's just see what's going on here. So I rolled my window down, and it was this young guy, and he's standing there, and he's so excited, and he's just pointing to the space. He goes, this is your space, right? He goes, this is your space. He goes, I saw you got pushed off the block, and I didn't want you to lose your space, so I saved it for you.
Wow.
I know, Francine, like, that never happens. You know,
wow.
And the only thing I could do was like try not to burst out crying and thank him. And then he went and got back in his car, and then I just slouched down because I was just bawling, because I'm like,
absolutely,
this is so much more than I could have imagined. You know,
absolutely.
I would never have imagined that. So it was, you know, I was like, wow, this stuff, like, if you just go that extra mile, if you like reach out to, like, you know, not just excitement, you know, not just one way of creating something, but if you add in like curiosity and expectation, and if you stay kind of detached, and if you don't drop it, like, so much more can drop in. So that was a huge lesson for me, you know. And I wrote it down because I'm like, I gotta not forget the story.
Absolutely.
You know?
Well, that's kind of unforgettable anyways. I have to admit, I won't forget it, even if it didn't happen to me.
It's, you know, a lot of things like that happen, you know. And for me, the key is just to stop, pause, remember, wait, I have tools. What can I do here? You know, and when you really get into it, life becomes like really interesting and creative, you know.
Yes.
Or, you know, I'm not always into it. Sometimes I fall out of it. I can't find the door, you know.
So you gave this person an opportunity to himself expand into his own beauty and light. And just you, by maintaining that frequency, which is also part of what we do in the park bench.
Yes, exactly.
So that is
Yeah.
Yes, that is wonderful. It's interesting because you had mentioned when we were preparing for this time together that you lived in New York, and I had planned to ask you how you use your Mastering Alchemy in New York, and you answered my question before I even asked it.
Yeah, that's a good New York example.
That's another good sign that we're already in a good frequency,
Yes.
I think. What do you like about living in New York?
Well, I ask myself that a lot because there's a lot of things that you don't like, you know. I've
Mhm.
lived there for a long time. It's always been my dream to live there, you know. It's like one of those things where you realize what you are and what you're not. When I was like 9 years old, my parents took me to the Met and I saw a painting and I
Mhm.
thought, if that I lived in a very small town in Western North Carolina, I thought, if that's art, I'm an artist and I need to be living here.
Mhm.
So, you know, I've maintained a lot of that alignment. And I think it's the bedrock, you know, because I can feel the bedrock.
Mhm.
It's got a certain vibe. There's just opportunity happens so fast. You
Yes.
can create more opportunities, I believe,
Mhm.
more than anywhere I've been else, you know. So it's I can like when I sometimes I'm in Cape May in my home here where I am right now, maybe for up to a couple of months in the winter. I rent it out in the summer, so I'm never here in the summer. But I came back from being here for a couple of months and I was lying in bed at night, my first night back in New York, and I felt this vibration in my first three chakras. I was like, oh, it's the bedrock. I can tell, you know, it's a mineral, you know, it's an earth elemental. And
Mhm.
here it is. And down here, I'm on a sandbar. It's very different.
So
That's what,
maybe now because of your ability to tune into the elementals, you're giving us an opportunity to understand why New York is the bustling place that it is, because from that solid bedrock, everything can be propelled.
yeah, yeah. And people are attracted there who want to do that, you know, who want
Yes.
to move fast, create, you know, keep going, you know, and there's a certain resonance. I mean, it's a really interesting place to me. It's
Yes.
fascinating. You know,
Yes.
down in the subways, you can open your heart and everybody is a New Yorker first. They're whoever they are second. And there's like a connection because it's like, okay, we're going to do this together and we're going to get to where we're going safely on time and nobody's going to kill anybody in this car, you know, and you feel it. So it's, I like that, you know.
That's wonderful. Yes, I can understand that. What is your favorite tool in MA?
Oh, everything comes to me. And I don't know if that's like a tool, but it's my tool, you know. And if I can have that in my awareness, which I don't always have, then everything else just kind of works with that and you know kind of plugs in.
Mm. It's it's kind of a mega tool as it aligns all other tools to
Yes, that's what
serve
it
their purpose at the
does.
right time.
Sure.
Absolutely, that's wonderful. Um, what triggers you?
Other people's energy. Like I am a constant student of boundaries.
Mm.
Steve Rother has a book with nine, I think it's nine personality types of spiritual development. And one of them, he calls that definition, boundaries definition. And that's really interesting to me because it's like we're constantly defining ourselves
Mm.
by bumping up against what we're not, you know, once we get it all out of the backpack. And it gives us information about what we are, you know, and there's that like sort of sandpaper rub sometimes. So I work with animals and people kind of intensely, and I open into a space where we're all merged as one. So, you know, that's a constant thing of, wait, I'm not me. Who else am I? I didn't, you know, do my rows right after this session, you know, because it's, you know, you let people in and then you got to like clean your space out.
Mm,
So,
mm, 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 mm. So it's kind of a dance.
Yes, other people's energy. Yeah, when I'm not managing my own energy
Yeah,
properly.
to navigate this, okay, like, oh, did I put the rose in? It's like that movement of a dance. I get that. What do you like to do in your free time?
I don't have any free time.
Well, that solves the problem. One less issue to solve.
The reason is because I have some people would think way too many interests. Like I'm just fascinated by so many things, and I just have to dive in and study. I cannot help myself. And it's all, part of, my core process is I'm an installation sculptor. I'm an artist. I'm an animal communicator. I'm a writer. I'm an astrologer. I'm learning homeopathy. All of these things, So it's, unless I used to be a bike racer. I'm a cyclist. Unless I'm too physically tired to do anything, then I just am researching, just curious, experimenting.
So that's what you like to do.
Yeah.
You're just like always inquisitive.
Yes.
And
yes.
That's a very expansive way to live.
It is. It can be a little bit exhausting. There's balance. Yes. But, if I don't get enough downtime, I am soup, So
my question would be, what kind of soup?
That'd be interesting. Each day is different.
We'll leave that answer for our next time.
Okay, great.
You have time to think about it and see what you come up with.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for this lovely time together.
Oh, thank you, Francine. It's really been fun.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. See you around.